Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's EBC video. We're back at St. John's for part 2 of us looking at Matthew 21. We're still in Matthew 21 in this story where Jesus has met the high priests and Pharisees, and they asked him a question. And then he said, I'll answer your question if you answer my question. And they refused to answer his question, so he didn't answer theirs. But he does tell them a parable then. And at the end of that parable, he winds up concluding that tax collectors and prostitutes are going to get into heaven before these high priests and Pharisees. And that would have been strong enough, right? But Jesus says, I've got another parable for you. And so he goes on, and here's where we are in verses 33 through 46 when he tells his second parable. In the second parable, there's a landowner that makes a vineyard. And this landowner puts a lot of work into the vineyard, right? He makes a watchtower for it, he makes the fences for it, he makes a wine press for it. It's a beautiful vineyard. And then he rents the vineyard to tenants. Now, he goes off to a faraway place in the parable, and the tenants are on this vineyard. And when it's time for the produce to be harvested, the landlord sends back 3 slaves. But instead of the tenants welcoming the slaves and giving the landowner what the landowner is due, they actually beat one of the slaves and stone one of the slaves and kill one of the slaves. Well, so the landowner thinks, maybe if I send more, I'll send more people, surely they'll do better. But no, instead, the tenants get to these more people and they stone them all and kill them all, and they do bad things, right? The same types of things to the second group. So then the landowner says, perhaps I'll send my son. If I send my son, surely they will respect my son. And so he sends his son to these tenants. But instead of the tenants actually respecting the son, these tenants go ahead and kill the son, deciding that, hey, maybe if we kill him, we can inherit what would have been the son's. It's a terrible plan, right? That's not going to work. But this is what happens in the parable. And at the end of this parable, Jesus then talks about the fact that these Pharisees and high priests would have heard it having been written that the cornerstone that had been rejected by the builder is now the chief cornerstone of the building. It's actually from Psalm 118, and we're going to look at that in just a moment. But we've got this second parable, and then the Bible says that the high priests and Pharisees figured out that Jesus was talking about them. Like, nothing gets past these guys, right? But so now we know that these high priests and Pharisees are doing it wrong, and Jesus is telling them they're doing it wrong. He actually says that all that's been given to you is going to be taken away and given to others. But this story, it's just fantastic, the layers that are in it. And we're going to get to Psalm 118 now, because if you think about the Pharisees and high priests for just a moment, like, what is it specifically that's motivating them, right? We tend to think of these Pharisees and high priests as sort of this, like, the arch nemesis, the villain in the movie type of people, sort of motivated by evil for the sake of evil. But I don't think that's what was going on, right? These are people who are established in the community, and the types of things that drive them are the types of things that drive us, right? They want to hold on to the power that they have. They want to be relevant to people. They don't want to be told they're doing things wrong. They think they've been doing things right? So this is what we have in the Pharisees and the high priests. Now, what Jesus then does is he references the fact that there's this cornerstone that's been rejected, and it's really easy to think about that as meaning that actually it's just all about the fact that they've done this wrong. But if you actually look at Psalm 118, where that reference to the cornerstone that's been rejected and now is the chief cornerstone, it is not a psalm about judgment. It's a psalm of praise and thanksgiving. It starts with the idea that God's steadfast love endures forever. It ends on that same note, that God's steadfast love endures forever. And in between, it talks about the fact that blessed is the name of the one who comes in the name of the Lord. That is what just a few verses ago in Matthew 21, the crowds have been shouting about Jesus. They know that he's of God. They know that he's been sent to save. And when we look at Psalm 118, it is about thanking God for bringing us through that difficulty. It's about knowing that God is there with us and that his love is there for us. So it's not about condemnation. It's about Jesus is there to save. And when you look at that chief cornerstone, you can see that all throughout that psalm. We're standing here at what is the Cornerstone, the way they're built these days, of St. John's. And I'm just going to point out something for us here. When you look at this Cornerstone, you don't know its history. You don't know if it's been rejected. You don't know if it was a great piece of stone. This one's probably concrete right here. But you don't know whether or not there's a history where somebody had rejected that stone. What you know is that it is holding the building up. There is no story except what the stone is now doing. And in our case, obviously there is a story about the Pharisees, about the high priest rejecting Jesus. There is a crucifixion. But the story is that now the cornerstone is holding our faith up. Now we're moving forward, confident that God's love endures forever. Everyone, have a great week.